Should there, will there, or could there be a fourth Dark Souls installment? That is a question that's been going around quite a bit as of late. So let's start with what we know. We know Miyazaki himself has said in an interview there's absolutely no plan right now for any sequels, spin-offs, or tie-ins, but I can't say for certain the possibility is 0%. But to me, we have to take this with a grain of salt. I mean, this is the same man that fooled an entire community into going crazy over a pendant that ended up having absolutely no purpose at all. Sound familiar? Could it be a ploy to keep us distracted on the thought that this isn't going to happen? It could be, though I don't think it likely that that is the way they'd go about it, but nevertheless, he could just be saying it to get the hype going. Or he could just be saying that based on how he felt at the time about the franchise, which could be subject to change. I mean, how many times did Hideo Kojima say he was done with Metal Gear? All of that is well and good, but it brings us to the question of, should there be a Dark Souls 4? And that question kind of depends on the circumstances for me, but mostly I think no. When Dark Souls 3 released, we finally got what was essentially our Dark Souls 2, an actual sequel to 1. We got a fair bit of questions answered and a whole shit ton more asked, which could eventually pose a problem. Now with the Dark Souls story arc, questions are a great thing. It is designed to get us asking questions and answering those questions based all on individual interpretations. We're given a solid foundation, and then it's up to us to determine the rest. That's the formula we know and love, and of course you know I love me some speculation, but when too many questions pile up and the answer bucket is left empty, we start deriving our story from nothing but interpretation, which is a bad thing. We still need and rely on that factual foundation of the story to be our guideline as we imagine a way. But the more and more questions we get, while in turn receiving little to no answers, that foundation begins to dissipate more and more until we're left with nothing but our imaginations. This is where the DLC comes in. Ashes of Ariandel asked far too many questions than it answered, and we're left with one last DLC to give us more insight into these questions, as well as the other thousands we've taken from the series. Let me put it into an analogy. If the story of Dark Souls has asked us 100 questions, its foundation is made up of 90 unanswered plot questions, which I believe is a pretty bad ratio. Now I'm not sure what the proper balance would be, I'll admit that, but it just seems way too wobbly at the moment. And with what we know from Miyazaki and the way things have gone in this game, there won't be a fourth to answer our questions. And unless the last DLC is just a PDF of answers, we won't likely get many out of it. Quite opposite, I believe, we'll get even more questions. With this trend going, if they decided to make a fourth installment, it would more than likely and unsurprisingly ask even more questions and likely ruin the integrity of the game, creating more and more story where the writers themselves would probably find themselves stretching and intentionally leaving vague strips of plot for nothing other than filler. That's why I'm nervous for this DLC. We need it to reinforce our foundation, and I'm worried that it'll just ask more questions. So should there be a Dark Souls 4? I don't think so. But if there were, what would I like to see from it? Well, that's super simple. Since I think creating a future story and more backstory to that is a bad idea, if it were created, I would like to see Dark Souls 4 take place during the Advent of Fire, to fight the ancient dragons alongside Gwyn, to watch the Witch of Izalith and her daughters incinerate the Archtrees, to avoid Nito's miasma of death and disease. I think that would actually be quite good for the Soul series to wrap up the franchise with. We would finally get to see how and where it all started. We'd receive plenty of answers from that, and we'd also probably find out that things weren't quite what we were told. Just like the legend of Artorias the Abyss Walker, everything in history has a pretty bow on it, so that we learned a very biased account of it. But if we could live it, if we could see it all, from Seath selling out his kind all the way to when Gwyn walks into the kiln to link the flame, I can't possibly imagine how great that game would be, and how incredible the story would be, and how much good it would do for the entirety of the lore in Dark Souls. Then imagine if there were two final endings you could trigger: watching Gwyn link the flame, or stopping him, before the habit is even able to become perpetuated. Boom! Fuck, that would be a great game. But is it likely? No. No, probably not at all. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on the future of Dark Souls and what you would like to see in Dark Souls 4 should it come to that. Take care, everyone. Please sub and give me all those sexy likes. Peace 'em out.